guys, welcome back. Today we are going to finally finish up our long journey through chaos in the Warhammer world with the Saga of Archaon. Archaon is the Everchosen of chaos, and he bears the favor of each of the dark gods. His destiny was not thrust upon Archaon, but hewn from history itself. The birth of a legend. The man who was to become Archaon was once a devout Templar priest of Sigmar, pure in heart and deed. A determined scholar as well as a natural warrior, he often studied the ancient grimoires, sequestered away beneath his temple, hoping to find a way to defeat the vile powers of chaos. The texts were locked away for a good reason, and his studies proved worse than futile. The priest uncovered a set of heretical manuscripts transcribed by one of the acolytes of the infamous Necrodomo the Insane, a prophet who, it is said, tore out his own eyes after having a vision of the destruction of the world at the hands of chaos. What Archaon learned from these texts is unknown, but legend has it that he uncovered a terrible truth. He screamed in rage until his voice cracked, rejecting the gods of the Empire as frauds. Burning down the temple around him, Archaon raged amongst the flames. He renounced his own name and swore he would not only give himself body and soul to chaos, but also forge a new life as the scourge of the deluded fools who worshipped the false gods of the Empire. The blasphemous manuscripts had not only contained the evil truths that caused Archaon to turn to chaos, but also Necrodomo's prophecy of the end times. Archaon learned that a great warrior would emerge from the darkness who would bear the blessing of each of the ruinous powers in equal measure. Known as the Everchosen, this warrior would have to prove himself by winning 6 great artifacts of power that had belonged to his predecessors. Archaon vowed that he would take up the mantle or die in the attempt. Abandoning his home, Archaon set upon an epic journey to the very north of the world to find clues to the whereabouts of the 6 artifacts of chaos. He cut a bloody path through both the Empire and Troll Country, slaying any man, mutant, or monster that dared bar his path. Onwards he trekked, through the frozen storms of the Northlands and the blood-stained wasteland beyond, for nothing could prevent Archaon from reaching the dreaded realm of chaos. He didn't even pause as he stepped over the threshold between the mortal world and unreality. None know for sure how long Archaon spent in the realm of chaos, what battles he endured, or what secrets he learned, but when he emerged, all could see the destiny that surrounded him. Shortly after, Archaon gathered to him a roving band of chaos warriors who called themselves the Swords of Chaos, and set off to claim his first prize. The first unholy quest. The first artifact that Archaon sought lay within the Altar of Ultimate Darkness in Nagaroth, the land of the sadistic Dark Elves. Archaon marched to the Citadel of Spite, a jagged tower that thrust into the sky like a spear piercing a heart. As Archaon approached the Citadel, he found a raging battle underway as the rival warband of Gorath the Ravager, Lord of the Bloodsworn, assailed the fortress. Though Gorath's reputation for violence was well known, the Dark Elves had halted the Bloodsworn's advance by launching a devious trap, and with their enemy pinned, their bolt throwers were reaping a deadly harvest. Archaon immediately ordered his warriors into the fray in the hope that, combined, the forces of chaos would emerge triumphant. Packs of warhounds loped ahead to attack the Dark Elf cavalry, harrying the Bloodsworn's flanks, jaws snapping hungrily over the throats of horses and riders alike. Groups of shades, firing upon the Bloodsworn from the shelter of an abyssal wood, were run down by Archaon's mounted marauders, their javelins hurled with enough force to impale Dark Elves against the boughs of the twisted trees. With the enemy ambushers slain, the Chaos forces advanced as one upon the citadel. Suddenly the air was thick with black-fledged crossbow bolts, a hail of death that killed barbarian marauders in their droves. But the ironclad regiments at the core of the Chaos Army marched relentlessly through the storm, trampling the dead and wounded into the mud as they advanced. At the last, the Dark Elf lines shifted, and crossbowmen withdrew as blocks of spearmen locked shields to face the approaching hordes. The first to reach the Dark Elf lines died in agony as their bodies were pierced by razor-edged blades. But Archaon and Gorath urged their troops onwards, and soon the massacre began in earnest. Every Chaos Warrior was a living engine of destruction. Maces burst heads like overripe fruit. Swords rose and fell in bloody arcs, and axes cleaved through elven shields and bodies both. The heaviest fighting was centered about Archaon and the Swords of Chaos. They advanced in the shadow of a great war shrine, and they fought all the harder knowing that the Dark Gods would be watching. The Dragon Witch. As Archaon cleaved yet another Dark Elf in half, he heard a mighty roar above him. He looked up and saw a vast shadow emerge from the clouds. A dragon with scales as dark as coal swept over the Chaos Army, belching forth clouds of corrosive gas that reduced entire regiments to piles of steaming flesh. Atop the monster's back rode a sorceress with ice-pale skin, and when she gestured toward the Chaos Warriors below, shards of black magic cut a bloody swath through them. Gorath howled a challenge to the Dragon Witch, knowing that the sorceress's death would surely attract the favor of the ruinous powers. But she did not deign to come within reach of his blade. His frustration was answered only by her mocking laughter as she called forth a howling wind of blades that enveloped the Chaos Warrior and flensed his flesh from his bones in the blink of an eye. I think flens is a cool word. A storm of murder. Archaon could only look on in rage as bolts of sorcery lanced out from the sky. Inspired by their Dragon Witch, the Dark Elves were counterattacking when one of their numbers stepped towards Archaon with murder in his eyes. Casting aside a cloak as black as midnight, the assassin leapt forth. Archaon barely managed to parry the elf's first blow, and his sword was wrenched from his grip. Though disarmed, he was not defenseless, and when the assassin struck again, Archaon dropped his shield and caught his opponent's wrist in one armored gauntlet, an eye blink before the other clamped around the Dark Elf's throat. Hoisting his assailant into the air, Archaon proceeded to cut out the assassin's heart with his own dagger. Archaon held the gory offering toward the Chaos War Shrine, and as he did so, felt the gaze of the gods look upon him. The heart in his hands began to beat once more, and a great bolt of lightning as red as freshly spilled blood rent the sky asunder. The gods had answered. Fury of the Gore Queen. Descending to the battlefield upon wings of fire came Valkia the Bloody. The Crimson Champion howled an unholy challenge as she dove towards the Black Dragon, and all eyes turned skyward to witness the epic aerial clash. Valkia moved with the fury of the wind, and lopped the sorceress's head from her shoulders before she could utter a single incantation. With its mistress slain, the dragon went berserk, snapping its jaws wildly as it tried to bite the Gore Queen in two. Its aimless wrath was nothing compared to the focused rage burning in Valkia's veins. Blood rained from the sky as her spear tore great gashes in the dragon's hide. Valkia drew fresh strength from every blow, and with one final slash, she sliced open the dragon's throat, casting its lifeless body to the ground below. Valkia's victory cry was terrible to hear, and as she plunged into the defenders below, the Bloodsworn redoubled their efforts. Knowing that with the Gore Queen present, Khorne would be watching them all. Sensing that the enemy was on the verge of breaking, Archaon plunged onwards, and the Swords of Chaos went with him. Like a great tide of death they went, striking a deadly hammer blow against the Dark Elf lines. The enemy tide of razor claws, grasping tentacles, and snapping teeth. The altar of ultimate darkness. With the Dark Elves in disarray, the Bloodsworn intent on butchering every last defender, Archaon entered the citadel. The interior was blacker than a corrupted soul, but Archaon strode on fearlessly. Such was his skill that even in the total absence of light, he overcame hundreds of misshapen troglodytes in the inner sanctums, reconsecrating the altar of ultimate darkness in the name of the Chaos Gods with the blood of the creatures that had crawled in the catacombs. When Archaon emerged, he was drenched in gore, but he bore upon his forehead the first sacred artifact, the eternally burning Mark of Chaos. Of Volkia there was no sign, for Khorne had called his Gore Queen to another battle-soaked field. The victorious warriors of the Bloodsworn looked upon the blood-slick form of Archaon, and knew him to be favored by the dark gods. Many fell to their knees, and, with their allegiance, Archaon's army doubled in strength. The Spirit of Morcar. Archaon left Nagaroth upon a stolen ship forged from black metal, and sailed into an undiscovered realm populated by savage half-humans. Archaon and the Sword of Chaos gave battle to these benighted creatures for 6 days and 6 nights until their city lay in ruins. In the depths of their necropolis, Archaon uncovered the tomb of Morcar, the first Everchosen of Chaos, who was bested only by Sigmar Unberogen himself. As Archaon reached out to claim the Everchosen's armor, it came to life and attacked him, raining a relentless fury of blows against the Chaos Lord. Only when Archaon spat a curse in the language of the Unberogans did the armor's implacable assault cease for a split second, allowing Archaon to smash it asunder with a devastating counterattack. The spirit of Morcar was banished, and Archaon took the armor for his own. The Eye and the Dragon. The third challenge Archaon faced was retrieving the Eye of Shirian from the lair of the three-headed Chaos Dragon Flamefang. Archaon awoke Flamefang by smashing his axe into the slumbering dragon's forehead. For many hours the two battled amongst the bones of legendary creatures at the base of the Cliff of Beasts. The dragon breathed searing flames over Archaon, and even swallowed him whole, but the armor of Morcar proved inviolable, and the Chaos Lord fought his way out of the dragon's gullet with the ferocity of a maddened warhound. With its insides shredded, the great drake eventually collapsed and died. Archaon plucked the Eye of Shirian from the gems encrusting the dragon's belly, and hung the artifact around his neck as a trophy. I wonder where they got the idea of dragons with gems embedded in their stomachs from. It definitely wasn't from a children's story from just after the turn of the century. The Steed of the Apocalypse. The fourth treasure was a demonic beast, Dorgar, Steed of the Apocalypse, the prized possession of the demon lord Agramon, whose menagerie included every imaginable creature. With the surviving swords of chaos at his side, Archaon battled his way past hosts of demons to Agramon's palace in the heart of the realm of chaos. Once inside, Archaon used the Eye of Shirian to track Dorgar, and when close enough, he vaulted atop the snorting beast. Dorgar burst into flame and changed shape many times, but Archaon's will was strong, and he broke the demon steed in as a stable hand might break a wayward stallion. The Slayer of Kings. Riding back through the gateway at the top of the world, Archaon journeyed to Chimera Plateau, where rested the demon sword known as the Slayer of Kings. At the plateau were scores of Chaos champions, all dueling for the right to take the sword as their own. As Archaon rode onward, many challenged him, but none could stand before him. Archaon spared those those who swore fealty to him, and slew the rest, claiming their warbands as his own by right of conquest. When Archaon reached the plateau, his horde was of such size that the Chimerae guarding its passes were quickly overcome, leaving Archaon and 3 companions to climb to the summit. Suddenly, what Archaon had taken for a mountain turned over in its slumbers, creating a series of earthquakes. Even Archaon was given pause. There was no way even he could defeat Krakenrock the Black, the father of the Dragon Ogre race. Instead, he and his companions stalked silently past the monster's titanic maw, only to find that the demon sword was clasped in the monster's chest. Prince Okrax the Great, strongest of Archaon's chosen, managed to lift one of Krakenrock's talons high enough. Okay, so now I'm not understanding. The sword was clasped in the monster's chest, but we're lifting talons. Oh well. Managed to lift one of Krakenrock's talons high enough for Archaon to grasp the Slayer of Kings. However, the demon within the blade began to shriek at deafening volume, threatening to stir Krakenrock to wakefulness. Thinking quickly, Archaon thrust the sword into Ograk's chest, knowing that the taste of royal blood would appease the demon. With the blade sheathed in his companion's corpse, Archaon descended the plateau to the cheers of his followers. The Crown of Domination. The search for the Crown of Domination took longer than all of Archaon's other labors combined. The crown had once held the Eye of Shirian, but had since been lost to history. Decades passed, and though he slaughtered foes across the world, still Archaon had no clue as to its whereabouts. The Curseling's bargain. As Archaon's warships left a fruitless search on the Isle of Corpses, they were enveloped in a great tempest that blew them towards the distant shores of Bretonnia. Awaiting them was the misshapen form of Village the Curseling, infamous sorcerer of Tzeentch. The twisted twin approached Archaon and explained that he had heard of his quest and used sorcery to summon the Chaos Lord, and bargained for knowledge of the crown's whereabouts. In exchange, Village wanted a harmless trinket, or so he said, guarded within the Brioine castle. Though wary of treachery, Archaon's desire for the Crown of Domination was all-consuming, and so it was that his army marched once more to war. An avalanche of steel. Archaon's forces laid siege to Brioine Castle, but the Bretonian trebuchets took a heavy toll on the Chaos Army. The first slab of masonry to fall dashed the brains of the Chaos Giant known as the Corpse Maker over a 20-yard area. As further projectiles plowed through the ranks of Archaon's infantry, leaving bloody furrows in the ground filled with the mangled bodies of the slain, he raised his sword and bellowed a challenge to the lord of the castle, calling him a coward and daring him to fight. Baron Lucas, the arrogant warden of Brioine Castle, oh no, it's Brionne. Okay. Of Brionne Castle, took Archaon's challenge as an insult to his honor. So it was that he opened the gates and sallied forth to meet Archaon. Several hundred noble warriors lowered their lances as Bretonian chargers galloped to meet the Chaos Menace. As the cavalry surged onwards, Pegasus Knights flew high above, Baron Lucas at their head atop a mighty hippogriff. With Lucas's army committed... Oh, I hope that wasn't too loud. I'm so sorry about that. With Lucas's army committed, Archaon smiled grimly and signaled his reserves to the fore. From behind a hidden ridge rode close to 1,000 Chaos Knights, and the ground trembled at their passing. From his vantage, Lucas could see snorting metal machine beasts among the Chaos Horde, brass behemoths who barged their way to the fore, their riders yearning to spill the blood of their foes. Bretonian and Chaos Knights clashed like two opposing tidal waves of steel and muscle, lances on both sides punching through enemy breastplates in explosions of gore. The Knights of Bretonia fought with courage and valor, but they proved weak weapons against the unyielding might of the Skull Crushers of Khorne. Axes slashed left and right as the Juggernaut cavalry carved a gory path through their foes. The Pegasus Knights dove to intercept the stampeding Juggernauts, but Village unleashed bolts of sorcery that engulfed the winged steeds, bathing them in the magical fires of change. In an instant, the Pegasi were transformed into dozens of different forms, none of which could fly, and so they plummeted to their doom. Heroic intervention. Lucas plunged into the fray, stabbing with a sword of shining gold, as his hippogriff's claws slashed left and right, cutting through chaos armor as if it were paper. Faced with his new threat, the chaos lines parted, and a hulking slaughter brute lumbered forwards. Those knights brave enough to charge the over-muscled monster died in an instant, swatted aside like bothersome insects. Lucas's hippogriff leaped at the slaughter brute, and though Lucas's sword was aimed true, it found nothing but air. The creature was shackled to the will of Jarkill, one of Archaon's exalted heroes. Jarkill even now manipulated the creature's actions through the movements of a wooden puppet, parrying Lucas's blade with the skill of a master fencer. Again and again, Lucas failed to land a blow, and he realized the giant beast was mocking him, toying with his foe before delivering the death blow. Growing bored of his opponent, Jarkill extended his control, and in the blink of an eye, the slaughter brute grasped hold of the hippogriff and tore its wings off, showering blood and feathers everywhere before smashing the beast into a pulp, with repeated blows of its battering ram-sized fists. The slaughter brute then picked Lucas up in one giant claw and crushed him like an egg. It was too much for the Bretonians, and, as they fed from the gory sight, Archaon's forces cut them down. The Twisted Twins' Treachery. Archaon looked upon the massacre with approval when one of his bodyguards was suddenly plucked from the saddle and ripped in half by the slaughter brute. In the corner of his eye, Archaon saw the magnitude of the betrayal as Jarkill's dead body slid from the end of Village's sword. The curseling had stabbed the puppeteer, causing the slaughter brute to run amok. Clearly, Village had lured Archaon here to slay him and claim the artifacts of chaos from his corpse. Archaon's knights could not evade the slaughter brute's rampage. Every strike crushed both rider and mount beneath terrible hammer-like blows. As the beast loomed over him, Archaon held his ground and unleashed the demon trapped within the Slayer of Kings. Unnatural vitality coursed through Archaon's body, filling him with strength. Moving faster than a speeding viper, he struck, plunging the demon sword deep into the monster's heart. Archaon dismounted and marched towards Village, smashing his bodyguard aside like ragdolls and flattening the sorcerer with a punch that could have felled a Drakvald oak. Holding the Slayer of Kings to Village's throats, Archaon demanded to know where the Crown of Domination was. Cackling to himself, Village uttered the name Be'lakor. Only the first demon prince knew the location of the crown. Still chuckling, Village vanished in a gust of multi-hued smoke. Archaon swore that when next he met the sorcerer, there would be a reckoning, and with that he left the killing fields of Brioine in search of Be'lakor. The final trials. Returning to the Chaos Wastes, Archaon performed a ritual to summon Be'lakor. The first demon prince had followed Archaon's saga with envious eyes, but he was compelled by the dark gods themselves to reveal the crown's location. The last of the great artifacts lay hidden within the first shrine of chaos, where the first human soul was bartered to the dark gods for power and immortality, high in the World's Edge Mountains. Leaving his army to fight the ogres and dwarves that dwell in the valleys, Archaon trekked to the entrance of the first shrine, and as he stood before it, a massive gate inscribed with blasphemous runes opened. The gateway led to a labyrinth populated by all manner of dire beasts and vengeful demons. Each of the Chaos Gods tested the men who would be the Everchosen in their own fashion. Archaon fought against embodiments of Nurgle's choicest plagues, overcoming torrents of racking disease with the blunt force of his will. He negotiated Tzeentch's multidimensional mazes of crystal, which would have trapped him for eternity had he not blindfolded himself and trusted to instinct alone. Temptation of every sort was paraded before Archaon by Slaanesh, but he refused the lures and marched stolidly onwards. When Archaon passed through the gates, it was onto a narrow causeway surrounded by living hellfire that seared his skin and burned away his hair in a second. From the flames emerged a roaring bloodthirster. A lesser mortal would surely have been slain by the greater demon, but Archaon refused to yield. Through sheer strength and determination, he wrested the weapons from the bloodthirster's claws and strangled it to death with its own barbed whip. All around him the hellfire died away until he stood in a simple shrine once more. At the rear of the shrine was a throne hewn out of the rocks, a withered corpse seated within, the Crown of Domination atop its leering skull. Roaring in triumph, Archaon took the crown and held it up to the skies, his wounds knitting closed, and his frame swelling with unholy power. It had taken him over a century, but the Lord of the End Times had met his destiny. A dark coronation. The Chaos Gods were united once more in their blessings of a single mortal man. To crown Archaon as the Everchosen, they chose Be'lakor, and though every fiber of the demon's essence burned with jealousy at the act, he was powerless to resist. The hordes of chaos that had flocked to Archaon's side fell prostrate in reverence as the darkly angelic figure of Be'lakor took the Eye of Sheeran from around Archaon's neck and fused it to the Crown of Domination with a pulse of eldritch force. As the crown was lowered onto Archaon's head, a great twin-tailed comet appeared in the sky above. Dark flame flickered from his visor as a vast ocean of battle-hardened warriors rose, chanting his name. Archaon took up the Slayer of Kings, mounted the steed of the Apocalypse, and began marching south to bring ruination and death to the world. And the Chaos Warriors followed in his wake. There you go. That is the beginning of the end for the Warhammer world. Though, of course, it didn't have to have been, but here we are. I have to say I'm a little disappointed they didn't have his conflict with Grimgor Ironhide, because Grimgor almost killed him. And he would have if it hadn't been for the fact that his entire army was retreating. Unless I've got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went. He has regular crusades north, is my understanding, in between killing Skaven. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video.